How are you, Dr. Fred Moss?
Anthony, great to have you. Great to be with you. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So am I. I'm excited. But before we get into our conversation, I'd love you to bring the listeners up to speed as to how you've arrived at what you're doing today.
Wow, it's taken a whole life to get that. So we're almost at 67 and a half years of it. And it did really start at the first moment that I arrived. So I arrived as a healer. I had two brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me, and they were living with my parents. And from what I understand, there was a fair amount of chaos and disarray going on, a lot of conflict. So little Freddie arrived to bring love and peace and some degree of connection to this family that was disconnected. And apparently, my brothers have told me I did a really great job, but at least for the first few years, not for all 67 years for sure, but for the first couple of years. And I was a healer. And then I became very enchanted with the whole idea of conversation and communication. I remember watching my brothers speak to my parents and wishing that someday I could be a big boy and actually learn how to speak and talk and listen and converse just like they were doing. And I certainly learned how to talk early. I was pretty precocious early on. And by the time that I got to school, I knew a little bit about math and reading and maybe a little bit about sex, drugs, and rock and roll too when I was like 5 years old. And so my peers weren't right with me. So I looked like I was smarter, like I was in the upper realm. And I was really a communicator. I love talking. I love talking a lot in elementary school. And there's no teacher that ever forgot having Fred as a student. That's for sure. And, I just knew that what I really wanted to do was learn how to communicate. And in school, what I really learned is that isn't what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to sit down, be quiet, and listen to the teacher and do exactly what that teacher says. And that's how I would pass. And I didn't really like that, but that's what made me kind of a pain in the neck going through school. And I figured, where do these people can learn how to communicate? My brothers and these older people, maybe junior high. And so junior high was even worse, and high school was even worse than junior high. So I decided I'd give it a try and go to college. And I went to the University of Michigan. Um, and I was there for like a year and a half, and it was nasty. I was in the engineering school, and it was like, it isn't what I wanted to do. So I dropped out. And I got on a bus and went across the country to Berkeley, California, so I could figure out what my life was about. And I had a great summer that summer. And then I realized my parents told me that it's unsustainable, got to come home, maybe get a job, something like that. So they told me there was this new industry. You might have heard, a new industry that they thought I would be good at. You might have heard of the industry. It's actually called computers. I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. So I came all the way back to the University of Michigan because that was the only computer in all of Michigan, a 2-acre facility. It was huge. Punch cards and batch jobs and all night long kind of stuff. And I thought I can do this for a term, but I'm definitely not doing this for a lifestyle. And I dropped out one more time. And I hit the road again and went back to California. And, from there, it was really like my mom's like, well, Fred, I told her that I'm not going to school ever again. And she said, that's great, but you got to get a job. So she got me an application for a state mental health facility for adolescent boys. And that was as a child care worker. And for the first time, I took that job and hoping to stay for only orientation, 3-week orientation. I figured 3 paychecks would buy me a car and I could drive around the country and figure out what my life was about. But instead, I stayed a fourth week, and then I stayed. I thought I'd stay 3 more weeks to get a better car, and then it was like, okay, I'll just stay 3 more weeks. And for 45 and a half years, nearly 46 years, Anthony, I've been fantasizing about quitting this job in 3 weeks, like over and over again for 46 years. But this one, I stayed on for a while. I got to learn how to love the job, and I learned how to love the kids and learned how to be pretty good at, because what was required of me was to be a good communicator. And I was a good enough communicator. These kids loved me. I loved them. We both healed every time that we talked. It was pretty amazing. The thing I didn't like was psychiatry. Psychiatry was already morphing, and they were already becoming medication based. Prozac hadn't even been invented yet, but there was like, the doctor would come down when Timmy and Tony got in a fight, and they talked to Tony for like 7 seconds and then talk to us for like 10 seconds and then go to nursing station and write something out. And then we'd have to go retrieve Tony and then hold him down on the ground and give him an injection of some stuff that would put him into a coma basically. And then we'd be like, success story. And I just thought that was so barbaric and unacceptable. And by the way, that's not ancient. That happened this morning in hundreds, if not thousands of hospitals around the world. That same story has happened thousands of times today. Let's just keep that in mind. It's still going on the same level that it ever was. I hate that. I truly hate that. But I thought I had learned something, and I really wanted people to know about it. And that was communication was at the connection, was at the heart of all human healing. So I thought I'll go back to school now one more time and go be a doctor. And it's a long ways between where I was and doctor, but I was motivated, and I stayed on and finished my undergraduate degree, and then went to medical school in Chicago at Northwestern, and then stayed on and went to a fellowship, went to a residency and a fellowship, and and I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist at that point. And I come out, and I've been typecast already. Like, all they really wanted from doctors at this point was to diagnose and medicate. Pretty much, it had already started that way. That wasn't quite as bad as it is now. It's gotten much worse over the years. That the whole purpose of a psychiatrist is to diagnose and medicate, and use my signature to write off, to sign off on everyone else's misbehavior. Like, when they misbehave, I sign and say that I'm okay with it. It's crazy, this job. It really is. And so that's what I did for many years. But you could guess, my soul was crushing, and my heart, ached, and there was like a sacrifice that was too high. And I did that for about 15 years, like knowing that I wanted to communicate with everyone, but being asked instead to not have to communicate, but just kind of diagnose them and heave medications at them that cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. These medications actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. They really do. Like, if you want to make someone depressed, give them an antidepressant. You want to make someone anxious, give them an anti-anxiety agent. You want to make somebody like moody, give them a mood stabilizer. You want to make someone psychotic, for sure, give them an antipsychotic. You don't believe me? Try taking an antipsychotic and see what happens. Like, you will be psychotic. It's true. So I knew that, and I learned that halfway through my career. And I got really angry about it. I was like, wow, if this treatment is actually making things worse, I should tell everybody. But I didn't know how to do it because I was pretty violent about it initially. I was really angry. So I learned how to wash it down into a way that I could do it now and do it on podcasts. And, just telling people the truth without hating insurance companies, or without hating big pharma, which I tried to call big pharma the other day, but I couldn't find a phone number. Anyways, like, there's no such thing as big pharma, because you can't talk to big pharma. It's not a thing. It's just something to point at. So over the years, I've learned that I'm not aligned with the way that psychiatry has served its business. I took an oath that said, first do no harm. And here I was now realizing that every time I medicated or diagnosed someone, I was taking a very significant chance of doing harm. So I decided I need to morph a little bit. And basically, I started doing something in 2006 that no one I knew was doing, but it seemed radical, but it wasn't that radical. I just took people off of medicine. That's all. I took my people off of medicine, and they got better, way better, reliably, predictably, profoundly better. In most cases, they lost their diagnosis that they thought they had for the reason they were taking meds in the first place. That was a cool finding, a very cool finding. And then I started traveling around the country as a doctor. So I never heard myself say this before, but this is that version of getting a car and figuring out what my life was about, is that I started being a doctor in all these different states. And then I started being a doctor in different countries. Where are you from, Anthony?
I'm from Sydney, Australia.
Sydney, Australia. Okay, cool. So yeah, so I started, I didn't get to Australia, but New Zealand does fit in this story in 2008. But I think if you got people from down under, you'll appreciate it. At the time, because I was so sick of American medicine, I decided I wanted to get a medical license in New Zealand. And so I had my trip all planned, which island, how I was going to do it, where, fly into Auckland and go to, Christchurch, and, just like hang out in South or North Island. But that never came to fruition anyways. And instead, that's when I started driving around the country instead of New Zealand. And I stayed in that job for a number of years, or multiple jobs. I stayed in that position of being a traveling doctor for a number of years. And then when I came back out, I didn't want to do standard psychiatry very much anymore. I had learned more about the heinous nature, the barbaric nature of the industry. But after all, that's where the money is for me. That's, that there's some money and there's some prestige, and maybe I can help and I can meet people. I'm actually good at it because I've been doing it now at that point for already almost 40 years. And it was like, I know this is what I do. So I took the job, but took the jobs, but at the same time, I wanted to create something new. And that's when I created Welcome to Humanity and Global Madness and Find Your True Voice and Creative 8. These are things that were created on the back end when I decided to let people know that maybe there's nothing wrong with them at all. Like maybe, people come to the doctor and they come to a psychiatrist in order to learn what's wrong with them. They don't come to the psychiatrist to learn if there's something wrong with them. They're already sure there's something wrong with them when they arrive. And if I let them know that they're okay, they only get angry. It's the only subspecialty that there is, that if you let somebody know that they're okay, they get mad at you. It's like very fascinating. So, Welcome to Humanity was created, as were a couple of my books. And then I started doing a lot of keynotes. And of course, I've done about 250 or 300 guest appearances on podcasts. And I also have dropped about 320 different episodes as a podcast host. Welcome to Humanity was my first podcast, Healing the Healer, and then another one called Insanity. That was 2 words. That was pretty fun too. I've settled down a little bit. I still do coaching. I still do keynote speaking. I'm learning how to actually take a bigger stage now. And I still do write my books, and I still do a little bit of psychiatry. But when I'm asked to do conventional psychiatry, I cringe, because the last thing I want to do is diagnose or medicate people, because in fact, I really have it, no kidding, that there's nothing wrong with you. You're stumbling and bumbling and tumbling through life just like all of us. And the truth is, none of us have a guidebook. None of us have a recipe book or a template or a manual. We don't know how to do this. None of us know what the hell we're talking about, pretty much. Not at all. None of us do. We just say stuff that other people we think know stuff says, and then we think we're right too, because he said it. Now I'm going to say it. Now they must be right, so I'm right. Whatever, man. We don't know what we're doing here. None of us. It's very clear that we're pretty confused. And, so then it was like a matter of really getting that if there's nothing wrong with you, then you don't need to be fixed. And if you don't need to be fixed, you don't need to come to psychiatry. And if you don't come to psychiatry, you won't get worse. And if you might get better, if you realize that this is your life to live and that you're responsible for all the mistakes that you make. I've made many mistakes already today. I don't know about you, but I make a lot of mistakes every day. And that's okay. And I've been uncomfortable today a number of times too. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable in this world, dude, you're dead. Like you're not alive. You're not playing. It's very easy to be uncomfortable, and it's okay to be uncomfortable. It doesn't mean you have a diagnosis. So now that's the stand that I take. And I really love taking that stand, letting people know that if there's nothing wrong with you, you don't need to be fixed. And if you come to the conventional psychiatry, not only are you not going to get fixed, but you're very likely to get worse. And I can't stop everyone from coming to my field. After all, they come see Dr. Moss thinking they're seeing a psychiatrist. And the first thing I let them know is that they should never go see a psychiatrist ever again. That's a hard sell. But the truth is, these medicines and these diagnoses don't help people. They're not in my first line. They're not in my 5th line. They're not in my 10th line. They're about my 17th line. My 17th line. I might do that. Yeah, that's where we are.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing your story, and the openness, honesty was incredible. So I was just thinking, as you're sharing your story, that your clients, your patients, or people that are requiring your support, their symptomology is probably a reflection of their process of finding their voice, right? So they're discovering themselves, as you said. There's a famous quote, and I can't recite the quote word by word, but it goes along the lines, from Carl Jung, which you've probably heard this.
I love him. Love him.
Yeah, you love him, right? So, he says the first 40 years of our life is that we're researching, right? It's discovering ourselves. And as you said, it's a lifelong journey of, trials and tribulations, trial and errors. You've shared in your story is, constant trying new things, and that's not me. That's not me. But this is me, right? And you always knew that you wanted to be a communicator, and obviously everything you do is associated with communication. But I just wanted to get to that point where, like, because in Australia, right, and this would be no different to the States, we're seeing escalating rates of diagnosis of ADHD, right?
Yeah.
And to me, like like I get anxious and hyperactive and inattentive when I'm doing things that have no interest in, right? Like, for example, I was like you at school. I had no interest in being at school. They were teaching me things I didn't want to learn, and so I was one of those kids that teachers thought had ADHD. But I can sit on this podcast with you with full attention for hours talking about something I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I really want to get your thoughts on this whole overdiagnosis of ADHD and what it really is. And is it something that they just need someone like you to help them find their voice as opposed to medication?
Well, you're asking a couple questions there. So you might know that my second book was called Find Your True Voice. And so that's exactly what I go after. And, my podcasting course, the one where I taught people how to be podcasters, was called True Voice Podcasting. So you're right about looking for your true voice. And, one of the things that we really got to get here is that people walk through life pretending to be somebody that they're not in order to protect the person that they are. Now, when you get how freaking absurd that is, it's like ludicrous, preposterous, amazing. It's like insane. Like, what are you doing pretending to be someone that you're not? Like, how is that protecting anybody? Plus, it doesn't even do what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to like protect you against being, dismissed or disregarded or disturbed or, disenfranchised or something. But it doesn't even do that. You're still going to have haters, even for the person you're making up yourself to be. So it doesn't even protect you. It's an absurd concept. And it's now reached a point where people we know, and hopefully not me and you very often, but some people who are literally saying things out loud that even they don't believe. Like, that's not even a lie anymore. That's like a lie on steroids, man. That is like way out there. And we say things that we don't believe in because we're fearful of being thrown off the island. And so, it's reached that level of just absurdity. And then you talk about the overdiagnosis of ADHD. You could make a case that one case is an overdiagnosis. The first case was an overdiagnosis. Because if you look at the 2 Ds in ADHD, you get 2 interesting words: attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Deficit and disorder. I say not, neither way. Are there a lot of reasons to be distracted in this world? Have you noticed?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't not be distracted.
Yeah, totally.
So how can there be an attention deficit disorder? There's like everyone is attention deficit. Like, compared to what? Compared to what is what we're talking about? And it's never a disorder. It's just like, well, because so many people are taking the medications and who have accepted a diagnosis for themselves, there's a new standard. What these medicines, they actually do is they do give you tunnel vision so that you can stay focused for a short period of time shortly after taking the medicine. But afterwards, they do what all the other drugs do, which is cause a worsening of your capacity to attend. But because offices and C-suites and Silicon Valley and, even Sydney, I'm sure, have corporations that are built on this ridiculous high functioning productivity notion. If you don't meet your deadlines, or if you're running a little bit slow, or you find yourself daydreaming, people say you have a condition, go get that medicine. So this medicine, people are coming in all over the world asking for Adderall, asking for Ritalin, asking for Concerta, asking for Strattera, asking for Vyvanse. That's true, but the problem with those drugs is that they too are making people worse. Do they work on the short term? Sure they do. This is another thing that works on a short term. It's called coffee, and it does the same problem, by the way. You have the same crash and same problem. It's just another drug. And the saddest part about this, of course, is the age group of the youngest people who are receiving the ADHD medications and diagnosis. You can be 3 years old and get a diagnosis for ADHD. It's like, what? Do you ever meet a 3-year-old who wasn't distracted? What are you even talking about? But parents hear it from their preschool teachers or the kindergarten teachers or the elementary school teachers that your kid is out of control in school. And the truth is the teacher should be taking responsibility for that. If you're delivering crap that no one wants to learn, you're going to have distracted kids. If you're standing up there being an idiot and pounding on a chalkboard and asking these kids to sit still and stare at that and then recite it, then you're a lousy teacher. You need to engage with your kids. You need to connect with your kids. You need to be conversational with these children. And when you do create that harmonic resonance, you get a whole new notion. And all of a sudden, Johnny, like it sounds like you, isn't hyperactive anymore. He's very focused, interested, and curious. They're all focused and interested and curious. We are all potentially interested and curious. Being focused, that's a hard deal, man. There is stuff flying by you every second that can take you offline. Even as I'm speaking now, I've spoken now for a few minutes here in this answer. I'm fighting back all sorts of distractions. Do I have ADHD? I don't know. If I went to a doctor and they felt like today would be a good day to diagnose me with ADHD, then I would have it. And then I would leave the office and I'd say, yay, they finally figured out a condition that explains why I didn't finish last week's deadline. Or they figured out a condition why I didn't like to study in college. It's like, the reason I didn't like to study in college is that studying in college sucks. That's why I didn't like it. Let's just face it. And the reason it sucks is because it's not aimed at giving us useful information to live. So ADHD, just like all the other psychiatric alphabet soup diagnoses, it's just kind of a myth. Some of my favorite psychiatrists, you talked about Carl, he's obviously amazing. But if Gabor Mate, he talks about that he has ADHD. I'm like, it's too bad. Jordan Peterson sometimes talk about ADHD too. I'm a little bit one level past those guys. I'm like, no, nobody really has ADHD, but everyone does benefit from the ADHD medicines on the short term, and everyone has their condition get worse if they continue to take the medicine. It has a touch of euphoria that's embedded in it, so there's some street value to that drug, as you know. If you don't have a doctor who'll give you Adderall, you can just go down to the hood and get some Adderall because people are selling it on the streets because it does have a euphoric quality. So that's my take on ADHD.
Thanks for sharing. And I'm really keen now to get into this area that you're very passionate about, or, it's your life calling, and it's communication. So this is obviously the work you do is, helping your clients find their voice, find who they are, their authentic self. How do you go about, I guess, first of all, approaching this conversation and then engaging them with it and allowing them to find their true self?
Yeah. Well, the best way to do it is to be a model of communication. When I'm authentic with you, it opens up the possibility and a really likely invitation for you to be authentic with me. That's how communication really happens. So one way to do it is to find my true voice and make sure that I'm standing for what I say and that it goes through and through as best as it can, like that my thoughts and my speech are consistent with my actions. If my thoughts and my speech are consistent with my actions, then all of a sudden we have an authentic conversation going. And whatever level of frequency, if 521, 428, whatever it is, all of a sudden we're at the human frequency. And it doesn't matter that me and you live, I don't know, 9 or 13,000 miles from each other. It doesn't matter. It's like we are both humans. We both know that we're already in love with each other, and we've only met each other on Zoom about 20 minutes ago. So why is that? Because we're both humans. We have the frequency of humanity. And so, one of the things that we really get to learn about this is that communication is what everyone is after. Everyone is interested in a human connection. Everyone, including the monks in the caves. Why did they go into the caves? Because somewhere along the line, someone hurt them. Someone probably messed them up. Maybe they learned from Buddha. Maybe some of them never got messed up. I don't think there is anybody who's never gotten messed up in a relationship. But let's say they, did get messed up, and now they're like, no, relationships are in the way of me learning Dharma, or in the way of me, finding my truest self. So then they give up on relationships temporarily, but it isn't because they want one. It's because it isn't because they don't want one. They do want one, but they've already been hurt or, in some ways injured or traumatized. So when I start talking about the possibility that there's nothing wrong with my patient, who I don't call my patient anymore because that creates a power gradient between doctor and patient. It means I'm always better than or higher than or like the guru. I don't think there's any great reason for that because, in fact, we don't know what the hell we're doing. And, I don't know what I'm doing any more than you do, any more than that person does. Let's just face it. Am I saying anything controversial? No. Not really. No. We don't know what the hell we're doing. No. Hello.
You're speaking the truth.
It's just the truth, man. Yeah. The only reason you think you're doing it is because someone else does it, and you must think that if he does it and you respect him, then you must be like him, and then you know what you're doing because you act like somebody else who also doesn't know what they're doing, but it looks like they do know what they're doing, and you want to be like them. So, when we open up the gates for the exercises and practices that we can offer people to take control of their life that they've already had control of the whole time, and giving those exercises, practice tips and tricks and ideas to actually move your life forward into the freedom and power of being yourself, this is when we create the possibility of healing. This is when we create the possibility of actually communicating, actually resonating with someone. And Zoom is so magical, given all the noise that we went through. Zoom or Riverside or Zencaster or whatever ones you want to use. They're all so amazing. This camera work, this video work that we've now called our standard way of meeting somebody allows us to still be able to look at each other's face. In fact, closer than we do when we're with each other. I don't usually get to, even if I was with you, if I got this close to you, it would be inappropriate. I'd have to ask you out on a date or something. So I'm not going to do that. So, we have the capacity to actually resonate and harmonize with each other and create an ongoing human connection. And by my experience, and I think most people would agree, what happens when you finally connect with somebody is a profound sense of healing takes place at that second, way beyond anything that any medication of any type or any diagnosis of any type or any treatment plan of any type can possibly create. So the best way to really help these people is connect, because when I help them, I'm helping me. And when they help me, they're helping them. And we start connecting as humans. And now all of a sudden, all the constraints and the diagnoses just tend to dissolve and disappear.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase that love and gratitude are the greatest healers.
And they are.
What you're sharing is you are focused on the connection with that person and an authentic connection.
Right.
You're just being yourself, allowing them to be their self. And as you said, you're connecting at that most human level. And
exactly.
And that's what we desire as humans, is ultimate connection with one another. And
it's not rocket science. I didn't have to go to college to learn that. In fact, I learned that far before college. I learned that before elementary school. When I was in the playpen, I knew that human connection was where the heart of the matter was, for sure. Of course it is. Of course it is. Hello.
Yeah. Is there some exercises, like obviously, you start, you open up, you're being your most authentic self, allowing them to be their most authentic self. You're connecting at that human level, and you're creating a relationship. It's starting. Now, what are some of the stepping stones or takeaways the listener can take from this in terms of, keeping or staying connected with their authentic self? Because as you said, there's so many distractions out there. They'll leave this episode, listening to this episode, and they'll get distracted. So what could keep them on course and to being their authentic self?
It's a good question. I think that the best thing that keeps you on course is practicing and noticing when you've fallen off. When you become inauthentic, if you say something that isn't quite true, if you start being quiet in a situation where you should have talked, or you start talking in a situation where you should have been quiet, those are good practices. It's almost like playing tennis or, playing like racquetball or I suppose pickleball, if that's your gig or whatever. It's like it takes practice. It takes practice of really learning your idiosyncrasies. Where is it that I fall off? How do I get to, really, like, I must have got distracted because I actually have forgotten the essence of your question, but can you ask it again? Would that be kind of you?
Yeah. How do we stay on the path of
Yeah, staying on the path.
authenticity? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So staying on the path is we know there's a little indicator in ourselves that knows when we're full of it. You agree? Like when you're not telling the truth,
Yes.
there's a part of you that bell is ringing. Like, whoa,
Yeah.
this isn't quite what I really know. I'm saying something that is different than what I really know.
So as you said, it's that constant self-awareness and being attentive to it, and then just getting back on course. And it's
getting back on course. Give yourself the compassion and the forgiveness and the acceptance that allows you to get off of course, because we have been programmed to be off of course. If we're going to pretend to be somebody that we're not in order to protect the person that we are taught that in school at a very young age. So when we want to choose to be authentic, it's not just a matter of I'm going to be authentic now. It's not that. It's more than thinking yourself to it. It's actually being it. Can you step in and resonate with your core values, resonate with what's important to you? You might go with, I don't know what's important to me. Well, I would actually argue that you do know what's important to you. And it's the same thing that was important to you when you were 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And it's still here with you, even though none of the cells that were there with you when you were 5 are here now. Isn't that interesting?
It is.
Do you get that there's no cell in your body that was there when you were 5? And you still remember some degree of what it was like to be 5. It's pretty interesting.
It is. And you've always had that calling to be a communicator, and it's still with you today.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
And straight after this podcast, you're doing another one. So
I am. It's my third one.
Wow.
I just got my third one today. Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on the show and certainly sharing your knowledge and wisdom with the Me and My Health Up listeners. How can they best connect with you if they want more of what you've got to share?
Yeah, I think the best way to really see what my whole life is about is this very cool site called drfred360.com, drfred360.com. And from there, we have offshoots to everything, offshoots to my podcast, offshoot to my writings, offshoot to my articles, my blogs, offshoot to my lead magnets, offshoot to my keynote speeches, offshoot to my podcast, guesting and hosting. They're all in that site. And it's a very, very well-constructed site. It also has a connect button, a contact button. And so if people contact me, what I would really love them to do is just kind of leave your full name and your best email. And then I or one of my staff will call you back and we can arrange something to have a conversation to see if there's a connection, because I don't mind going over international lines. As a coach, I don't do any prescribing. I don't do any diagnosing. You can be sure I will never diagnose you. I do have a diagnosis for you, though, Anthony. Are you ready?
What's that?
You're right. Your diagnosis is Anthony Hartcher. That's your diagnosis.
Yeah. Thank you.
Every piece of you just reeks of Anthony Hartcher. I'm just saying. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that diagnosis. So that's what we have, and that's what we got, and that's the best. Of course, I troll around on fake book, they called it yesterday. I like that. Fake book and LinkedIn are, I suppose, my two go-tos. I like LinkedIn and I hate Facebook, but it is what it is. And then, I have a couple other websites and you could go to directly, but if you go to the Dr. Fred 360, it gives you all those options in a menu form.
Fantastic. And to the listeners, I'll include those links in the show notes, so you can go to the show notes, click on the links and connect with Dr. Fred. So I just wanted to thank you once again for putting aside the time, enlightening the listeners with your wisdom. Really appreciate it. It was a very insightful conversation and I really enjoyed it. So thank you, Dr. Fred.
Of course. Thank you, Anthony. Great questions. It was really fun to talk to you. Thank you for reaching out from way down under.
You're welcome. Have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you.